Hello everyone and welcome. I'm Kawaii Brit, and today we're going to be continuing on with my October series. This month, the videos will all be Halloween themed, and instead of verbalizing the steps I take to make my creations, I'm going to be sharing different spooky stories. My stories, my town stories, and other stories that just interest me. I'm aware that many of you may be skeptics, so if that's the case, I hope you enjoy the craft I'm making. And for those of you interested in history, haunts, and just plain spooky things, I hope you enjoy taking this adventure in the series with me. I've always had an interest in the paranormal. From a young age, I started researching different myths, haunts, and urban legends from all around. My DVR is filled with recordings from various ghost hunting TV shows and searches for enigmas in the great unknown. It always upset me that many of the great historical places in my hometown were never visited. That's why I wanted to do this series. I hope you enjoyed all the tales and stories I've told so far. There are plenty more that I can share with you in the future, but today I'm going to end this series by telling a few small urban legends and myths from my area that I grew up with. I hope you enjoy. The first is the grisly story of p.t.barnum's Fiji cannibals and the events that took place in a hotel when they visited York County. In 1872, circus master p.t.barnum purchased 4 captured cannibals from the King of Fiji. The 4 were used in Barnum's freak show, a common feature of circuses at the time. His acts also included an African snake charmer, a giraffe, and sea lions. In May of 1872, p.t.barnum brought his traveling act to York County. He and his entourage took temporary residence at the Pennsylvania House Hotel in the city of York. While the 4 cannibals were living at the hotel, one of the Fiji cannibals, a dwarf, became ill. He refused to eat and he could only be heard repeating one word: Fiji. Late one evening, when a doctor attempted to give him medicine, he fell backward and died. His body was encased in a coffin and placed in another room in the hotel until burial arrangements could be made. A guard was placed at the door to keep watch over the body. Later, the guard left his watch for less than 30 minutes, and when he returned, he discovered that 2 of the other cannibals had somehow entered the room and were chewing on parts of the dead man. The 4th cannibal, the female, had been converted to Christianity and was not feasting on the corpse. She stood by the other 2 and scolded them, begging them to stop. What was left of the poor cannibal was buried in a local potter's field with 7 other unmarked and unknown bodies. 25 years later, the bodies were disinterred, and people were eager to open the Fiji cannibal's coffin and see if he was intact or if he was indeed eaten. The coffin was empty. It is rumored that a local doctor hired someone to snatch the body. The doctor then used the body as an exhibit in his office, but there was never any word whether the limbs had any nibble marks on them. The story was never determined whether or not it was true. Many newspapers made reports on the incident. One of them stated none of the Fiji cannibals were even cannibals, and that the female had even been born in Virginia. The second story that I have for you today is one that I found while doing research for one of my other videos. I thought it was just a silly legend that you might find funny. This is the story about the Clark Alley shapeshifter of York County. A newspaper story from the 1880s talks about a group of people that went looking for something that was haunting West Clark Alley in York County. There were reports of there being a ghost of a horse thief roaming Clark Alley. According to the paper, a boy who was selling newspaper was once walking through the alley when he was approached by what he describes as a little imp. When the boy approached the imp, it suddenly vanished into a cloud of smoke. After the ghost disappeared, a piece of paper was left behind. The paper in question contained foreign letters and characters on it. A group of men, or a historical group of ghost hunters, went to Clark Alley in search of finding and capturing the creature or ghost. Instead, they were met by a couple of other apparitions. One of those apparitions being that of a demijohn. A demijohn is a large, long-necked, multi-gallon flask used to store beer. This demijohn had 2 legs and a rolling wooden keg tapped on both ends. Not much is mentioned about what happened after they caught sight of the demijohn. Newspapers of the era report the stories, but they all seem to end by saying that the group was to gather again and to decide what to do next. There is no other mention of the groups going out to search, nor anyone seeing the spook anytime after that. This next legend is one that I remember from my childhood. It is the story of the man buried inside the Columbia-Wrightsville Bridge. The Columbia-Wrightsville Bridge, also known as the Veterans Memorial Bridge, spans the Susquehanna River between Columbia and Wrightsville, Pennsylvania. Construction on the bridge began in 1929, and it was officially opened on September 30th, 1930. Not long after its opening, an urban legend began to spread throughout the county as well. The legend goes as follows. While working on the bridge, one of the workers constructing the bridge fell into the freshly set concrete. The concrete began to harden, and no matter what the other workers did, they could not free the man from the bridge. It is said that his body was never retrieved. Instead, they continued to build the bridge, entombing him where he fell. A plaque sits at the spot where the man remains. Some say that you can even see his boot print on one of the bridge's concrete supports. This legend has since been proven to be false. There is not a body buried in the concrete of the Columbia-Wrightsville Bridge. However, there were many other deaths that occurred during the construction of the bridge. The first death reported is of a worker who died when a gasoline-operated dinky train hauling cement ran over him. Another man disappeared while running an errand. His body was later found with his skull crushed. The company believed this to have happened when the boom of a nearby crane hit him on the head. The third man to die was also struck by a dinky train. The engine struck him and knocked him off the bridge. He landed on the ice below and then sank. Another worker later retrieved him. The fourth death on a bridge happened when a worker fell 30 feet off the bridge and landed on his head. He died 4 hours later. Another worker also fell from the bridge and drowned. He was found 18 days later, still clutching his saw. A fifth death happened when a worker fell off of scaffolding, hit his head on the bridge arch, and then fell into the water. He survived the ordeal, but later succumbed to his injuries at the hospital. The final death recorded from the bridge took place just several hours before the construction was declared finished. The worker died when a piece of heavy lumber slipped from its cable and crushed him. The last legend that I'm going to share is another that I remember from my childhood. Growing up, I spent most of my childhood at my grandmother's house. Next to it was a small wooded area. My grandmother lived right by my high school, and sometimes when I would walk home, I would go through the clearing in that wooded area. I once took a friend through the clearing with me, and they told me the story of the wild man that lives in Pennsylvania, and since then I haven't walked through those woods. York County and Lancaster County folklore speak of a wild man that lives in the woods of Pennsylvania. It is said that he was created by a curse that was put on the land by the Susquehannock Native American tribe. They created the curse to get revenge on the colonists for all the cruel deeds they did to the Native Americans. 2 detailed reports of the wild men are documented. In the first, a hunting party came face to face with the wild man in the woods of Wayne County. The group of men were alerted to the presence of the wild men when their dogs began to bark frantically. When they looked, they spotted the wild man, dressed in only a tattered corduroy suit, coming from the bushes. The group tried to follow him, but became lost. After some time lost in the woods, the dogs began to bark again, alerting them to the presence of the wild man. This time, the wild man was standing on a limb of a nearby tree, about 8 feet off the ground. The hunting party tried to catch him, but the wild man threw them to the ground and escaped, yelling unintelligible words as he fled. A member of the party said he was able to get a close look. The wild man had dirt caked into his skin, and his hair and beard were long and matted. The second account comes from the Amish community in Lancaster in 1978. 3 farmers were working in a field when a large man approached them. The man was wearing nothing but old boxer shorts. He was caked in dirt, and his face was hidden by a long and matted beard. The man yelled unintelligible phrases and waved his arms around. The 3 farmers were scared, so they ran and hid. Later, one of their relatives came to see what was going on. She too saw the wild man. When the wild man saw her, he sat on the ground and stared at the sky. One of the farmers, along with the woman, approached the wild man to talk. When they did, the wild man once again mumbled, stood up, and walked away. The woman who approached him recalls that the man smelled very bad, almost like rotting flesh. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this October's theme. If you did, make sure to hit the subscribe button up there to be notified when my next video comes out. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Those links are located in the description for you. I also stream. Check me out on Twitch on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and Saturdays at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. My Twitch is also in the description. If you made it this far, hit the like button if you haven't already. And let me know in the comments, would you be interested in hearing more of my ghost stories in the future? Thanks again for watching, everyone. Happy haunting!